The basis for all breath work within Taoism is that it should be based upon deep abdominal breathing, or as we say within my school, the breath should be anchored. Okay, meaning the breath should be naturally anchored very low into the abdominal region, so that your abdominal cavity is fully opening and closing when you breathe. So most people will know what abdominal breathing is who've been involved in these arts. But I think what sometimes people miss is that in order for you to abdominally breathe, there's kind of three parts to it, right? Because you have the muscular movement of the body, obviously, with the diaphragm going down and the abdominal space expanding on the inhalation generally. But then you also have the sinking of the breath, which really means the sinking of the qi that should go with that muscular movement, but doesn't always. There's also the sinking of the mind. Like, where is the focal point for your mind when you just relax? Like your sort of mental energy, if I just sort of let it go placid, where does it go? Does it go to my brain? Does it go to my heart? Like what? And a lot of people's energy and a lot of people's mind is too high, anchored too high in the body, or that's how we view it in Qigong. Now, if you think about what happens if your energy is too high or your mind is too high, it very much corresponds with the kind of stress level on the nervous system. So the higher the breath, the higher the mind, the more highly strung your nervous system is. So it puts you into a state of fight or flight, really, a state of stress. And if you're in a state of stress, you're in a state of fight or flight, there's no way the qi is going to sink. And this is kind of the root of so many of the internal arts, whether it be Qigong or Neigong, alchemy, Tai Chi, it doesn't matter, Bagua, the qi must sink. Now, a lot of people try to sink the qi using the breath by kind of forcing abdominal breathing, so they breathe into the hands, or they put their back on a wall and try to breathe into the wall, pressing their kidneys into the wall, or lay on the floor and breathe into the ground, or whatever, trying to control their breath to sink it down. And actually, these methods are a little bit flawed because they don't adhere to one of the major Taoist rules, which is that you shouldn't really ever try to do anything. And I don't mean be lazy, but I mean those kind of things are overly contrived, they're overly governing on the body, and that's not really what we're trying to do, because the problem is that they use a kind of intention, the intention of breathing low, but the very act of using your intention raises the qi. So you end up with a very curious state where people who do this kind of forced abdominal breathing low, they end up getting the muscles to go down, but the qi stays high and the mind stays high, the energy stays high, so still the qi doesn't sink. So I've met people who've done years and years of what they think is abdominal breathing, but they're still stressed, they're still highly strung, and they still can't sink the qi because they kind of separated these aspects of the breathing apart. The muscularity of it, the muscular breathing, and the energy and the mind have pulled apart. And we want them to move together and sync. So we follow the kind of Taoist principle of none-doing or none-governance, and we achieve this by applying attention instead of intention to the bodily processes of breathing. This is what we're trying to do. So the idea is that if you give your attention to something, like unwavering attention, pure attention to something that is developing, it's nourishing. So the more you give attention to that thing, whether it be a child that's growing or your own bodily process, the very act of giving it your full attention means that it actually evolves in the direction it's supposed to go. It's nourishing. Whereas if I give it my intention, I'm kind of forcing and contriving, and that creates a kind of stagnation that is the problem. So in order to learn to anchor the breath, to correct abdominal breathing towards this state, the idea is to apply unwavering and passive attention to your body. You simply give it your attention, you simply give your breathing your attention, and then wait. That's it. Simple as that. No need to contrive anything. So what we do with this exercise is basically I guide you through a series of regions of the body, and you simply give your attention to that region of the body, and then you don't try to change it. So if, for example, if we're paying attention to the nose, don't try to change the breathing as it passes through your nose. Don't try to change the shape of your nose or the length of your breath or anything like this. Also, don't pay attention to any particular phenomena that arises. It doesn't matter either. Don't judge. Just simply give your attention to the nose, because the process of giving your attention to it means that the body has the kind of nourishment from you mentally and energetically that it might require in order to change, in order to develop. And basically, we just apply that principle to regions of the body, and your breathing will naturally open up and move towards a form of abdominal breathing that is truly anchored. And if you can get this kind of abdominal breathing, then your mind will sink and your breath will sink, and probably most importantly for the internal arts, your qi will sink. And if your qi sinks, then it will go to the dantian, which is what so many of these arts are trying to do. The more you can apply your attention to the breath and it unfolds in this way, it evolves in the most efficient way possible, the more you'll move out of fight or flight, and you will calm and you will center, and you'll notice a kind of placidity will come into your body. So this is really what we're trying to do, learning to apply the attention to our body in a very specific way so it can unfold in the right direction. Now sometimes people engage with very strong Qigong or Neigong work, especially stuff to do with filling the dantian or putting yin and yang qi in the dantian and things like this, which are quite strong methods usually, or breath retention, that kind of stuff, quite strong. And what they tend to do often is they do these kind of exercises before they've correctly anchored the breath. Now if you do it before you've anchored the breath, then the problem is that your focal point for your energy is too high. So then the more energy you do build, the more qi you do get, what you think is the dantian. Actually, you hyper stress the body, you hyper stimulate, and you move it into fight or flight mode. And this is a lot of the reasons for why many people start to develop problems from very strong qigong or yogic practices, because they haven't yet got the quality of anchored breath. They think they have, but they haven't. So consequently, they're just firing, putting more fuel on this sort of stress state, firing themselves up. So what I often do with people who have this kind of conditions is I just get them to learn how to anchor the breath before they do anything else, before they do breath retention, before they do any pranayama, before they do any intense qigong, before they do anything with the dantian. Let's just anchor the breath. Let's just learn how to get your attention into the body in the correct way, in the correct way, so that your body can just unfold and evolve towards a state of being at ease, so that then I can kind of overlay these powerful techniques on top, and then your body will be fine and be able to process that energy, and the qi will go to the dantian rather than firing up your nervous system and stressing you out. So this is what the exercise is going to do. It really is key. I think all qigong, tai chi, neigong meditators should start with this kind of practice before they engage in anything else. They should do this kind of work just to make sure the breath, the mind and the qi are in the right place before they do anything. It's kind of like organizing everything to get it in the right spot before you start your practice, and a lot of people have started the practice before they've done this organization, which is why they can either sort of glass ceiling in their development or get problems later on down the road, especially kind of stressed anxiety. I see a lot of people do very strong internal work who don't have anchored breath, and they always end up quite agitated and a bit cross and a bit domineering after a while, because they're just doing all this energy work that's pushing themselves into this stress state. And really, if they just anchored the breath, they'd be a lot more chilled, and these kind of things wouldn't happen. It'd be a lot better for their development. Last thing to say is, a lot of people see this kind of work that I'm going to show you, and they think it's Vipassana, as in the Vipassana sort of meditation. It's not. It's an easy mistake to make, because it looks quite similar, because you're paying attention to your breathing. But just because you're paying attention to the breathing doesn't mean it's Vipassana, because Vipassana is not an exercise. Vipassana is a quality, a principle of insight that arises as a result of the work. And essentially in Vipassana, to simplify it, I mean, it's a horrible oversimplification, but you're becoming aware of the arising and falling of something, the kind of transitory nature of something that moves you towards the insight, is that nothing is constant and nothing is independently existing, separate from a process. These are the kind of insights that arise from Vipassana, and a lot more. I apologize to meditators for that description, but it's it's a vague overview. So the reason that this exercise is not Vipassana is very much because it doesn't have that aim. It's not aiming to develop insight. It's specifically aiming to enable your breathing to evolve in the right direction, so that it could be anchored low and your qi will sink and your mind will be rooted to the abdomen as its kind of focal point. So give it a go and see what happens. And I would say that most people, if you can apply your attention to the body correctly, certainly after a few times practicing it, you'll find that by the end of the practice your breathing is very long and slow and steady and low, and you just feel comfortable and your mind is at ease, and then you're like, whoa, I'm so relaxed. Now, if there's a difference between how you feel after the exercise and before the exercise, there's a sign there for you, isn't it? Because if you feel more relaxed afterwards, there's been a movement from one state to another. Now, in actual fact, you want to be living in the second state. That state of relaxation at the end of the exercise should be normal, especially for an internal arts practitioner. So if there is a change, take note of that, because it means you're probably living in a slightly fight or flight state, and you don't want to do that, especially not with internal work. You've got to become comfortable, you've got to become at ease. So you want that post anchor in the breath exercise state to become normal for you, to become normality. Now at the same time, if you pay attention to your breathing and it becomes tighter, becomes constricted, it means you don't yet have good attention. What you have is intention. You might not realize it because that intention you're carrying into your body might be subconscious. It might be emotional stress or chronic tension that's stored there, and then when you look at your body, everything gets really tight. It means you're carrying with you lots of intention. Relax, 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 relax. Simply give attention, simply listen to the body, listen to the breathing as explained. And if you purely give your attention without any carried subconscious intention, if you purely give your attention to the body, it will move into a state of comfort and ease that will be highly pleasant. So I can highly recommend it. Give it a try, see what happens.